Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I have with me a fantastic guest. His name is Rob Barham. He's the Director of Data at Gousto. We'll be talking about being a data native company. That may be a new phrase for you, but we're going to get into what data native means. I love the Gousto brand, what Gousto are doing. They're one of the first in the food industry to be valued at £1 billion towards the end of 2020 after an investment round. Really exciting brand, very fast going, growing, and I'm really excited to have Rob on the show to talk about what it's like there, how data is used to help transform and accelerate the organization and support customers in what they're trying to do and interact with the business. So Rob, really, really great to have you on the show. Thanks for coming along today.
Absolutely, great to be with you.
Cool. So Rob, you and I have caught up, and I should say that I've got a book coming out soon called Data Means Business. In fact, it may already be out when this episode gets released, and I'm really pleased that you and your team and Gousto have been referenced and case studied within that, because I think your story is so great, and what you guys have achieved and how you use data within your business is great, and I'm looking forward to getting that into the limelight for you, and hope this episode also gives a bit of additional flavor, excuse the pun, to what we talk about in the book as well. So looking forward to that happening too, and thanks for your support with the book.
Definitely, I'm looking forward to it as well, and always love a good food pun.
I can't be a good food pun. So let's move on from food puns. Be great to hear about you, Rob. Your story, how you got to come to work at Gousto. And then we can dig into the business, and also tell us a bit about Gousto as well. Not everyone may know who you guys are.
Absolutely, yeah. So if I start with Gousto, we are a meal kit company. We provide personalized recipe recommend. Let me start that again, actually. I can see there's a lot of sun coming through. I'll maybe put the blinds back and go back for it 1 sec.
Yeah, I'm going to pause. Go for it.
Great. Well, if I start with Gousto, we are a recipe kit business. So we provide recipes to customers who receive personalized recommendations and then select recipes they want and have them shipped to their address. You have precisely measured ingredients, so there's no food waste. So it provides a great way to get access to food, to get new ideas on what you want to try out, and a great new way to cook and discover new ideas through that as well. So that's the company. So my journey to Gousto. So I've been working in data for some time. So I originally started out in marketing analytics, and then worked in a number of roles, some consulting, some working as kind of a perm in a data team. Immediately before Gousto, I was working for an e-commerce business, the Very Group, and started out working in their data science team. Then that ended up merging with our data engineering team, and ended up looking after their data science, data engineering, and BI teams as a whole. With Gousto, I've been here now since June, and even in that time period, we've gone on quite a journey. So we've kept growing, we've reached unicorn status, like you said, and there's been all sorts of developments in terms of how we surface data to parts of the business, in terms of our data products and how we develop those, and lots of opportunity in all of those areas as well. So I think it's an interesting company to be in if you're a data professional, because to your point earlier on, we're a data native business. We've been using data for quite a while. It's really at the heart of our mission and what we look to bring to our customers.
Amazing. Should we just talk about this phrase, data native? The term digital native has been around for a while, and that clearly that's organizations that sort of start and end with digital. Some of those feed into sort of physical world, but they're digital in nature. You are that, but you're also data native. What do you think that means, or what do you mean by it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, to me, it really means that data's been part of your organization from very early in your journey as a company. I think a lot of organizations, they've maybe been going for quite a while, and then they discover opportunities to use data to add value to their customers and to their products. Yeah. I think the distinction with a company like Gousto is that's been part of our mission since really, really very early on. And so tangibly, that means we'll have products which have been iterated upon for many years and are really part of the fabric of our offering in terms of our product set. But I think it also embeds in the culture as a result as well. So you see aspects of that in how anyone from a relatively junior new team member through to an exec might either think of an idea to use data, or maybe think of a suggestion of how to improve an existing data product. So I think it kind of cuts both across the product elements and also the cultural elements. And I think it comes back to how early in your journey did you start embedding data, and how widely has it been embedded across the company?
Yeah, I think that's a big difference. I think as a new business starting out, you'd be mad not to start as in fact, mad not to start as a digital native business. But if you're not a digital company, certainly putting data at the heart of what you do and how you do it, and finding ways to embed it into, or even have it as your product, but certainly embed it into your organization. I love your founder Timo Bolt has his LinkedIn profile says that we're a data company that loves food, and that I just love the kind of idea that for an organization to really get data, as you say, it's a cultural thing, and if your founder and your head honcho, your head chef, maybe you call him, I don't know, is talking about being a data company, that's a great starting point to have that permeate through the business. I imagine, does it feel top down like that?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that makes a huge difference when you have the leadership of a company not only valuing data for what it can do to bring insight or to surface data products to customers, but actually framing the company partly as a data company. I think that shift in your positioning as a business makes a huge difference if you're a data team, and it really reverberates through the whole culture. So to me, that's huge. I think if you're trying to either start a company with this mindset, or maybe take an existing company and take it from where you are to being more data oriented, having that sort of top-down perspective on not only is data valuable, but we are at some level a data business is huge. I think it really transforms the opportunity you can bring.
Yeah, clearly from a marketing point of view, it's not necessarily something you'd tell the average punter, but I think certainly in business circles and internally within the organization, feeling that way and acting and behaving that way makes such a big difference, doesn't it? Language does really is really important and does really work. So when you went on your way into the organization, was that super clear? Is that sort of what led you to want to work with Gousto and start on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mix of things, really. For me, certainly, one, the fact that the company was so energized by the potential of what we can do with data and already quite far along its journey in doing that, that was a major attractor to me as an organization. I think the other aspects were the product itself. So I think the fact that we are providing something which can really make a real difference to people's lives day by day, but also helps with sustainability. So we reduce food waste a lot, even compared to conventional food retail. That for me was important. And then I think the culture at large. Gousto is partly a company which values data in its culture, but it's also a very ambitious culture. We want to make things happen. We want to support each other while we're doing that. And that was a factor as well, because we want to make use of data and build great products, but we have a huge ambition level as a company to do that. And that was really energizing for me also. So it was kind of a mixture of those factors coming into it that made the difference for me.
Yeah, great. And so your role is the director of data. So what's the sort of span of responsibility or accountability within that role?
Yeah, so we have 3 teams within our data function at Gousto, and I look after those teams effectively. So we have our data science team, who are building automated data products that will either land value directly for our customers on our website. So maybe they'll optimize the menu or recommend certain recipes, or they may be optimizing our operation. So we have lots of algorithms that are running in our supply chain at various points, which are also part of what the data science team is building and developing. So that's kind of the first team. Then we have an analytics team. They are providing insight to help us make decisions. And that could be anything from a really complex analysis right the way down to a dashboard that could help surface what's happening in part of our operation. Then we also have a data engineering function, which is, as you expect, ingesting data, piping it through to be used, transforming data, modeling it, and so forth. And I think my role across that is really a mixture of kind of team strategy. What should our long-term investments be? Where should we focus? What use cases should be developed? Number one. I'd say number 2, products. So what should we build? How should we build it? Where I tend to get involved at quite targeted points. And it can often be the beginning of a new piece of work. So if I think about our future factories, when we design them, I'm involved quite early, not just to think about how we can use the factory to get value out of data, but what kind of factory should we be designing? What is the right layout for optimization opportunities? And then I'd say the last bit is just around the team. So a major part of what I do is scaling the team, hiring. We're growing a lot as a team. We're looking to bring in great talent. And then just ensuring we work well together and with the rest of the organization as well. So it's a mix of those aspects across the different parts of the team.
And is it seen as a value adding function within the business? I mean, the way it sounds like a strange question because of the way you articulate it, but often organizations it's sort of a back end function, but it doesn't feel like that the way you're explaining it. And certainly as a data native business, I'd be surprised if it feels that way. But how does the rest of the organization kind of interact and see you as a function? Is it a sort of a cost, or is it a real enabler for the business?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we think about this quite a lot because I think as a data team, especially when you scale, you have a lot of people, it's quite expensive, and you do need to demonstrate the value that you're bringing. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind for me on it. One is, I think we are generally seen as a value creating function, and we try to capture as much as possible the value that we're bringing through our products. So if I give you an example, if we are looking to release a product in our factories, that may grow our capacity or our throughput, it may reduce our labor cost, and we'll try to tangibly demonstrate the uplift that we'll get from that. And there's normally a very, very good ROI on our products, partly because of the value they bring, but also because we have quite a good hit rate as a data team. So most of what we develop actually lands and is released in the organization. So that's one part of it. I think also we are, alongside a lot of other teams in the company, quite key to our success as an organization in the future, because we want to differentiate on choice. Gousto provides more recipe options than any other comparable player in this vertical in the UK. We want to scale that. And I think our ability to be able to personalize and recommend from that big universe of menus is hugely important. And our ability to have a data-driven supply chain to be able to manage all of that with good unit economics is hugely important for that, both of which rely upon data. So that's kind of part of it as well. I'd add also that we are quite cross-functional. So data at Gousto tends to be embedded in tribes and in squads. And so at some level, it's less data delivering things as a data team. It's more, we're part of the success of the squad, which is comprised of a collection of different profiles, all of whom are releasing some value through a product that they're building. So we're usually part of that in terms of how we're delivering things.
Yeah, there's some key essence is of being a data native company there, isn't there? You mentioned culturally, it's just embedded within the organization DNA. It's top down. It's understood that, it's mandated almost to use data for a decision. But there's two really important things I think you mentioned there. One is being seen and genuinely being a value creating function. I love that phrase because that just proves that you're needed. It's desirable. It's necessary, and there's good value that comes out of it. And that incremental value, whether, as you say, it's providing value to another team or it's embedding within a business thing that you're doing, is a real necessary thing. But also this idea of cross-functional teams that you mentioned, I'd like to dig into that. And you mentioned squads before. I'd like to dig into that a bit more. But you're just part of delivering the value chain of the business. It's not something separate. That's what it feels to me when you explain that you're trying to generate good recipes, and data is part of that decision. You're trying to get products to people, and data is part of that process. So it feels very sort of threaded within the business rather than a sort of separate function.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I think you've captured it perfectly. And that's how we try to deliver products in general. I mean, there are many different models you can have for a data team in terms of how you organize. They all have advantages and disadvantages. For us, we do have a centralized team in terms of how we hire and build a community of practice, but we're very decentralized in how we interact with the rest of the organization.
Yeah.
So if we have a data scientist or a data analyst, they will typically be embedded with a squad. That squad will be mapping onto a particular domain. It will include product managers, maybe a delivery manager. It will have some kind of representation from the functional part of the business it's intersecting with. And it will be responsible for, yes, releasing products in a kind of effective, efficient way, but also for discovering what the right products are to build. So we try to use those units to kind of look ahead and do some discovery on where should we be a year from now? What should we be researching now that we need to get ahead of? And to do that thinking also. So that's typically how we work. We're normally delivering value through those cross-functional squads, which for us works quite well. I mean, there's many different models you can use, but that's worked well for us.
Yeah, there's a few new phrases you've thrown in there, Rob. So potentially for our audience. So let's cover some of those. You mentioned squads. So in Gousto, what's a squad?
Yep. So maybe I'll start actually with a tribe and a squad, so we can make the distinction there. So for Gousto, a tribe is a large-scale delivery mechanism for releasing value in a particular part of our offering, which sounds very vague, but if I try and like specify that a bit more, we'll have different parts of our offering for customers. So we have the menu and the physical website. We have the way we communicate to customers as we try to grow our organization. We'll have our supply chain and our physical operation. So the various different domains. We might pick our supply chain and say this is a clear domain where we want to have a cohesive set of activity around it to do everything from a forecast, how many orders will likely be coming in and how many ingredients we should therefore order, right the way through to creating the best physical unboxing experience possible.
Yep.
How do we create that? How do we make that happen? So we start with those, and that's kind of the tribe level, and that's intentionally itself a cross-functional entity. So you will have leads from a tech function, a data function, as well as from a business function intersecting in that. So with our supply chain one, you will have operations as part of that activity. Within that, you have squads, which are a smaller level of activity, which are where most of the actual development happens, where we simply decompose that major domain into smaller domains. Right. So we might have forecasting, that is a squad. We do have a squad in our supply tribe responsible for building effective forecasts. We do also at the other end have a squad responsible for delivery. How do we get a great delivery experience for our customers in terms of range of options, express delivery, etc. And there are many others. Yeah. And each of those squads has a clear domain mapping, a clear mission, a clear set of objectives it has to drive. And it has, insofar as possible, as complete a collection of professionals within it to deliver its value autonomously. So that will typically be a product manager, engineers, a data scientist, if it's a data science oriented squad, some are not. Right. And then maybe some other profiles as well, data analysts, delivery managers, some other kind of SMEs from the business often involved as well. So that's kind of typically how we deliver. The key thing I think is autonomy. They need to be autonomous where possible so they can release value with as few external dependencies as possible. And that really creates the velocity you need to release value at scale.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference in that model is that this isn't about how you structure your data function. This is about how you structure your business as a whole. And you don't, almost a data native company is a bit of a strange phrase then in that respect, because actually this is just running a business and data, it's almost weird that you've even got a team that's called data team and that you're the director of it, because it's as you say, in the way you articulate your role, it's about ensuring you've got the capability in order to deliver it, because it's just embedded in the way that you operate. In fact, these tribes and squads are about delivering the service of the business, and data is part of that, rather than you've got some business teams over here who are trying to do things and asking the data team for some stuff. Or you trying to work out what the business wants. It's just wholly aligned. So I think the difference with like the data native business is that this is a business structure that has data within it, rather than a data structure that you're trying to work out how best to manage and where you place those different data people. It's sort of a real shift in mindset.
I think that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, and I think partly it brings data very close to other professionals in the business. But I think a lot of the value is the other way around. It's if you're a data scientist and you're working in a squad or a tribe, you're very, very close to the problem domain. Yeah. You're exposed to different people who see different aspects of that problem domain. And that's often what generates the right ideas and helps you build the right product. Versus if you're maybe a more centralized team, you'll have requirements coming in, you'll understand what you're trying to build at some level, but you might have less exposure to the detail of the problem domain itself. You'll be further removed. And that, I think, inhibits not only delivery, but also your ability to generate new ideas for data products. I think it's that deep knowledge of the problem domain, which often helps the most, actually.
Yeah, there's a sort of quite a big debate in the data world about, do you educate the business on data or do you educate the data folk on the business? But the way you've articulated it is not really that kind of problem. Everyone's working on a business outcome, and some people have speciality and specialisms in certain capabilities, and they come together to create a really special thing that hopefully improves what you're trying to do as a business. It's no data in business; it's kind of combined.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. We don't really even use the term the business when we're talking about how we deliver here. It really does just mesh together as a result of the kind of structure and culture that we're trying to build. So I think you captured it perfectly there.
The other important components you mentioned that I think are vital to that model being successful, and that's this idea, and you've mentioned it quite a lot, of data products, and also if you've got data products, the ability to manage them, the product management side. Both of those things are quite new. So let's just unpack those a little bit. So data products, what does that mean for you?
So for me, I mean, I would start with kind of the definition of a technology product. So it is something you build that is cohesive and is solving a particular customer or business problem, and that you can manage as a distinct entity. So you could include in that anything from an algorithm that routes orders to factories, right the way through to a recommender system. And there are many other examples. Now, when I think of a data product, it's simply a technology product that has a large data or data science component to it. So a recommender is a very good example of that. It is a standalone product. It has a major engineering component if it's going to be successful, but at its core, it has some recommendation algorithms which are informed by data science, which help it be successful. So that for me is kind of the definition.
Okay. Yeah, great. So, and you treat it as like you treat your end meal box as a product, you treat your recommender or your algorithm as a product in its own right. You feed, you water it, you nurture it, you iterate and improve it.
Exactly that, exactly that. You see it as something you want to continually improve and enhance. You have some measure of what success looks like for that product.
Yeah.
And you're always trying to kind of discover into the future what improvements you should build to get there and then execute on those improvements over time. And I think importantly as well, you are managing the success day to day. So the squad who's responsible for that product, if we take the recommender, is also very much responsible for fixing anything that goes wrong, making sure that if we have an incident, we learn from that and we reduce the probability of that happening in future, doing that kind of regular maintenance to make sure it's working as well over time. So it's really very much kind of you own it, you build it, you fix it if it breaks, you develop it, you improve it all in one space.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you don't have this distinction between the project team and then the support team. It's an always on cycle of building and iterating on products that improve an outcome.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think it is simply more efficient to do that. I found in my experience, you have less of the requirement for knowledge transfer between some support team and the team building things. But I think it also sort of creates the right incentives. I think there's something about if you're responsible for fixing the product if it breaks,
you're
going to be building it in a different way, right? Yeah, you really feel a greater sense of ownership for it. Yeah. So I think that's part of the value this approach brings as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So just that's around that little collection of new terms of product management, clearly something to do with the management of those data products. Do you have a specific team, specific set of people, specific set of skills that are doing product management and responsible for a particular one or more data products, or is it dealt with some other way?
We do have a specific team. So we have a product management function, which within it has everything from heads of products through to junior product managers and everything in between. And within that, we have product managers where typically each squad, each of which maps onto a particular domain. So we do have, for example, one squad looking at our recommender. Each of those will have a product manager who is responsible for thinking about the product roadmap, thinking about the future vision of where we should go, thinking about the metrics we should improve, and laying out a plan for how we get there with the resources that are in that squad, which will be engineers, possibly data scientists and others. So we do have that function. Not all of those are managing data products. Some of them are more conventional technical products. But typically we do have quite a data-oriented product management function. So we find that even where they don't have data scientists yet, some of them will be thinking about, hey, is this an opportunity for optimization? Could we improve this with a data scientist? So we definitely have a culture of that within that function.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, I think it was worth just bringing those to life a bit, because I think all of those components, the cross-functional teams, the autonomous bodies, the focus on outcomes, the data as a product management, again, are all really important facets of being a good at data, and B, acting and behaving like a data native company, even if you aren't one. So great. Thank you for sort of unpicking how you guys do that. So just sort of on this idea of that, this is quite a different way of working for many people. I think digital businesses have been set up quite in a similar way, with product management for digital products, if you're managing a website. But for many organizations that are trying to get a hang of data strategy, get a hang of how do they get themselves, pivot themselves over to this way. So there's a lot of people that are like not working in this way, right? So this is I think it's quite new, really exciting. It's why I wanted you guys in the book, because I think you're at the sort of sharp end of what we call the optimized stage of our level up framework, which we won't go into now. But that suggests, and that means that there's probably, when you're bringing in people into your team, both sort of data crew and everybody else, are you looking for people? In fact, let's look at that through the lens of, say someone in your, I don't remember, your supply chain tribe.
Yep.
That maybe people that aren't sort of data scientists, data engineers, but in, helping the sort of business side of driving that supply chain. How are you checking that these people can get this way of working? Because it is, as I say, it's slightly different. Are you screening people in a different way to make sure that they work this way? Are you trying to just find a sort of general underlying set of principles and you educate? Like, how does that work at Gousto?
Yeah, it's really a mix of things. I think there is an aspect of it being part of how we hire, certainly at senior levels. But I think it sort of happens somewhat organically because we typically have quite a broad panel of people looking for talent, doing assessments. And so many of us will look for people who are enthusiastic about data and what they can do with it, that it kind of comes through as part of that. But then I think it's a good point, because you do have the challenge of, if you have people joining a company, maybe at the middle levels, lower levels, how do you ensure that they're bought into that culture and understand what you can do with data? And particularly when we're scaling up so much, where we're hiring a lot of people quite quickly. Yeah. So our growth rate in terms of people and team is really fast. So in terms of how we do that, I mean, there's a couple of things we do as a team to try and make data accessible and bring it to others and other teams. Yeah. One is, as a data team, we try to be very visible and very accessible. So I think it's easy to forget, if you're in a data team, that a lot of the work you do can seem quite hard to understand. It's a bit opaque. It's often very hard to interpret if you're someone not from that background. Yeah. So we try to flip that a little bit and both go out of our way to make it clear what we do. So we do what we call a data boot camp, where we will go out and we will kind of walk through what is data science, how do we do it, what are some of the pitfalls, how can you engage, how can you find use cases, and really kind of break it down. Right. And try and show how it doesn't have to be that complicated and anyone can get involved. But also with our products and our analyses, when we build things or develop things, we try really hard to make it really accessible. So we will find ways to articulate in everyday language that's meaningful to the rest of the organization of what a product does, so they can really engage with it. So I think it's a mix of those things. We try to really get out there as a team, and we try to make it as accessible as possible. And I think that works, largely speaking. I mean, one sign of it is, we often see suggestions for product improvements from all over the place. So I'll get an email, or my team will get an email saying, hey, you've got this algorithm that's optimizing your menu. Have you thought about optimizing for this as part of it? Have you thought about using it for that? Yeah. Which is really great. And often those lead to new ideas, which we wouldn't have thought of ourselves as a team.
And of course, you encourage that. It's not, because everyone's focused on improving, the outcome of that, whatever the request is, then there's no reason to say no, other than it's not going to work. But you may not know that until you've tested it and tried it out. So I love that. And again, that's the cultural thing, right? People are open to giving ideas, and you're open to receiving them. Again, that's not always the case. And I think that's great, really, really great to hear. Cool. So is there a biggest difference, I suppose, to what you've seen elsewhere? Like, if there was sort of one or two biggest differences for what you think has really made this, makes this work and going forward, will make it work, what are the kind of two or three sort of big differences you've seen here versus where you've worked elsewhere, or just seen sort of in the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, we've spoken about a couple of the biggest ones already. So I think the leadership involvement in putting data at the heart of the company, that's huge. Having it from the top down really helps.
And sorry, Rob, and on that one, you're not having to, this is the brilliant thing, right? You're not having to necessarily, by the sounds of things, educate your leadership team on that, which is quite a luxurious position, I think, compared to many. But that's right, isn't it? They, as you've said before, it's already baked in. This is an understanding that this is there, you haven't had to sort of sell this in. This just exists.
Yeah, I think definitely at that high level, it already exists. There is still always an effort for maybe a more complex data product, or maybe for the less visible data foundations, so data engineering and data platforms, having to kind of surface why certain things are required there and the difference that will make. There's still that.
Right.
But I think as a big enabler, leadership, top-down support for data is huge. I think the operating model we have, how we embed, that's really important as well. But I think if I think about other enablers or other things that feel different at Gousto, if you're a data team compared to maybe some other environments, I think a major one is that we think really big about data. So I think one of the traps that you can fall into as a data team is, particularly if the company isn't yet comfortable with data science or kind of cross-functional data product development and so on, you may pick a raft of use cases, which typically come from people's existing problems, and you will then try and rank order them by feasibility and value, and you'll lay out kind of the next 12, 18 months plans based on developing and solving those problems, which I think is useful. But I think we try to build on that by saying, great, if we look 3, 4, 5, 10 years out from now, what will really differentiate us as a company, and how will data help do that? And we'll think about, what if we have a universe of 1,000 recipes instead of 50, 55? And how will we change our product offering on our website to accommodate that? How will our factory look? And we really kind of work back from there. So we always try to have like quite a big vision of what data will do 3, 4 years from now. And that makes a big difference. I mean, it gives you a North Star to aim for, but it also builds quite a lot of excitement getting towards that journey, which I think I've not quite seen everywhere. I think in some organizations you have that. In some, it ends up being a bit more tactical, and it's about addressing sort of the next 6, 12, 18 months, which again is important, but I think it's important to think beyond that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I think Rob will that's such a great part of the story, the visionary part to sort of end on. So I think we'll wrap up, but it's such an inspiring story for me. I think what you guys are doing, how you guys are set up, really does do this industry justice, the data industry justice, and it does the business industry justice. I think it's, you know, you are at the sharp end, and I know, you know, it's not easy. You know, you've talked about it as quite, you know, as quite factual that's how it is, and we've explored it. But I know there's a lot of work to get there, and it's a lot of work to do what you do. But I think it really, you know, I'm really sort of passionate about the kind of model that you guys have got. And it's not easy for everyone to pivot to it, but edging towards this mode of working, edging towards this value creating functions, cross-functional teams, treating data as a product, thinking and acting and behaving like a data native company is the way to be successful with data. And I really appreciate you sharing your story and how you guys have done that. Absolutely. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Happy to chat. Great. Thanks a lot. And thanks everyone for listening. We really hope you enjoyed that. Can't wait to talk more about these kind of topics soon, and we'll catch you again.